Thanks for the feedback. The Science and Art of Receiving Feedback Well, by Douglas Stone and Sheila Heen. Introduction. A 17-year-old musician named Luke steps onto a massive stage. The spotlight is so bright he can't see the 5,000 faces in his hometown audience, but he can see the 3 giant, glowing red X's at his feet. This is America's Got Talent. He's made it through the auditions, and now, he's performing for the judges. He takes a breath, clutches his ukulele, and plays his heart out. When he's finished, the feedback comes swiftly. One judge, Howard Stern, leans into the microphone and says, theatrically, "My mother made me play the clarinet. Your mother should never have let you play the ukulele." The audience roars with laughter. Stunned, Luke stumbles off stage, where a camera crew immediately ambushes him. "How do you feel? What do you make of the judge's feedback?" Good question. How do you feel when the world gives you feedback that is off base, unfair, and poorly delivered? When it feels less like a gift and more like a public humiliation? We've all been there. Maybe not on national television, but we've all felt the sting of a performance review that felt unjust, a comment from a loved one that cut deeper than they intended, or the silent feedback of being picked last, or not picked at all. We swim in an ocean of feedback, from the grades on our papers to the look in a friend's eyes. And most of our lives, we've been told that the secret to navigating this ocean is to get better at giving feedback. We send our managers to training, we read books on communication, we learn formulas for how to deliver a difficult message. We focus on the person speaking, the giver. But what if we've had it backwards all this time? That is the profound and revolutionary question at the heart of Thanks for the Feedback, written by Douglas Stone and Sheila Heen. These aren't just any authors, they are legal scholars from the Harvard Negotiation Project, the same minds that brought us the classic book Difficult Conversations. They've spent decades working with everyone from corporate executives and world leaders to oil rig operators and astronauts, and they uncovered a simple, powerful truth. The key to growth isn't in becoming a better feedback giver. It's in becoming a more skillful feedback receiver. Today, we're going to unlock this hidden skill. I promise you that by the end of our time together, you will see feedback not as a threat, but as an incredible, misunderstood superpower. You'll learn how to find the priceless insight hidden within even the most clumsy, and frankly, unwanted criticism. This isn't just about getting better at your job or in your relationships. This is about taking control of your own growth for the rest of your life. Book summary. It seems like it shouldn't be so hard. After all, as human beings, we are wired to learn. From the moment we're born, we are little learning machines, driven by a deep curiosity to figure out the world. We want to get better. We want to grow. But there's another, equally powerful human need that's always pulling in the opposite direction: our deep, fundamental longing to be loved, accepted, and respected just as we are. And therein lies the paradox of feedback. The very act of someone giving you feedback, no matter how helpful they intend it to be, carries an implicit message: the way you are right now isn't quite okay, and so we bristle. We get defensive. Why can't you just accept me for me? Receiving feedback sits at the collision point of these two core human needs: the drive to learn and the longing for acceptance. And according to the authors, learning to manage this collision is the single most important factor in our growth. The real leverage in life doesn't come from waiting for the perfect mentor to arrive and give us perfect feedback. That's a fantasy. The real leverage comes from creating pull. It means getting so good at receiving feedback that you can learn from anyone, no matter how poorly they deliver their message. But how do we do that when our immediate, visceral reaction is to defend, deny, or shut down? The authors discovered that when we get thrown off by feedback, it's not for a million different reasons. It's almost always for one of 3 specific reasons. They call these the 3 triggers. If you can learn to spot these triggers in yourself, you can begin to manage them. The first is the truth trigger. This is the most straightforward. We get triggered because the substance of the feedback just seems wrong. It's unhelpful, inaccurate, or just plain false. Our internal voice screams, "That's not true. You don't know what you're talking about." The second is the relationship trigger. This one isn't about what is being said, it's about who is saying it. Our reaction is shaped by our history with that person, our trust in them, and how we feel treated by them in that moment. The feedback itself might be valid, but we can't hear it because all we can think is, "After everything I've done for you, this is what you have to say to me?" And the third, and deepest, is the identity trigger. This trigger isn't about the feedback or the person giving it. It's about us. The feedback has made us question who we are. It has rocked our sense of self. We feel overwhelmed, ashamed, and off balance. Our identity story, the story we tell ourselves about ourselves, is under attack. And when that happens, learning is impossible. We're just trying to survive. Understanding these three triggers is like having a map to your own internal world. When you feel that jolt of anger or shame, you don't have to just react. You can pause and ask, which trigger just got pulled? Is this a truth, relationship, or identity issue? Just naming it gives you the power to respond with skill instead of instinct. Let's start with that first one, the truth trigger. It's the one we all know best. Someone tells you to be more of a team player, and your first thought is, "I am a team player." That's just wrong. But the authors urge us to make a critical shift. Before we decide if feedback is right or wrong, our first job is to understand it. We need to move from "that's wrong" to "tell me more." Because feedback, as it turns out, isn't just one thing. When we use that word, we're often talking about three completely different things, and we get them tangled up all the time. The authors ask us to separate them: appreciation, coaching, and evaluation. Appreciation is simply about saying thank you. It's about recognizing someone's effort and making them feel seen and valued. It motivates us. Coaching is about helping someone improve. Its goal is to help you learn and grow. And evaluation is about telling you where you stand. It's a rating, a ranking, a verdict. It answers the question, how am I doing? We need all three, but we often get our wires crossed. Imagine you've been working tirelessly for your new boss, Rick, in a chaotic role after a company merger. You're feeling uncertain and unseen. What you really need is some appreciation. But when you ask for feedback, Rick gives you a list of 12 things you could be doing better. That's coaching. It might be good coaching, but because you were craving appreciation, it lands like a ton of bricks. You feel more invisible than ever. Or, let's flip it. Maybe you desperately want coaching to get better at your new job, but all Rick says is, "You're doing great. Keep it up." That's appreciation and positive evaluation. It's nice to hear, but it doesn't help you grow. This is what the authors call a cross-transaction. We're having two different conversations at the same time, and it leads to frustration and misunderstanding. The first step in handling a truth trigger is to figure out what conversation you're actually in. Are you looking for a pat on the back, some advice, or a grade? And what is the other person trying to give you? Just clarifying the purpose of the conversation? Hey, are we talking about how I can improve, or are we talking about my year-end rating? Can untangle so much confusion. This happened in a story about a father taking his twin daughters, Annie and Elsie, to the park to practice batting. He gives them both the exact same advice, in the exact same tone. Annie loves it. She feels her dad's attention, she's learning, and she's getting better. But Elsie hears something completely different. She throws down the bat and stomps off, wailing, "You think I'm not good enough." The father was offering coaching. But Elsie heard it as evaluation. She heard a verdict on her talent, not a helpful tip. We do this all the time. A well-intentioned suggestion from a friend to call your mother can be heard as a helpful reminder coaching or as a judgment that you're an irresponsible son evaluation. How we sort the feedback determines how we feel. Even once we're clear on the purpose, there's another layer to the truth trigger. The feedback we get often comes in vague labels. You need to be more proactive. Just be more confident. You're too enmeshed with your clients. These labels are like the word soup on a can. You know the general category, but you have no idea what's actually inside. Is it chicken noodle or cold borscht? A supervising attorney named Erwin tells his new hire, Holly, that she needs to set better boundaries with her clients. To Holly, that means she should care less, put in fewer hours, and stop fighting so hard for them. She immediately rejects the feedback because it goes against everything she believes in. But that's not what Erwin meant at all. When he finally explained, he said, "I've seen clients ask you for money, and I've seen you give it to them. Don't do that. It undermines your professional role and sets up a dynamic where they stop trusting your legal advice." Suddenly, the feedback made sense. It wasn't about caring less, it was a specific piece of practical wisdom. To get past the label, you have to ask questions that get at two things. Where is this feedback coming from? And where is it going to? Where it's coming from is about the other person's data and interpretations. What did they actually see or hear that led them to that conclusion? What's the movie in their head that they've summarized with that one-word label? And where it's going is about the advice. If I were to take your advice, what would I actually do differently? Show me. Give me an example. But the biggest reason we get stuck in truth triggers is because we have our own data, our own experiences, and our own interpretations. And they often don't match. When we hear feedback that contradicts our view, our instinct is to say, "You're wrong." The authors suggest a more powerful move. Ask, why do we see this differently? Perhaps you have different data. A CEO and a receptionist in the same company have completely different information about what's going on. The CEO sees the pressure from the board. The receptionist hears the unfiltered complaints from visitors in the lobby. Neither has the whole picture. Or maybe you have the same data but you interpret it differently because you have different implicit rules about how the world should work. At your old job, being direct was valued. At your new job, you're supposed to be nice. You haven't changed, but the rules have, and suddenly you're getting feedback that you're difficult. And finally, there are our blind spots. These are the things about ourselves that are obvious to everyone else but completely invisible to us. And we're not just blind to them, we're blind to the fact that we're blind. The authors use a powerful idea called the gap map to explain this. It starts with our inner world, our thoughts and feelings. From these, we form our intentions. To act on our intentions, we engage in certain behaviors. And those behaviors have an impact on other people. The problem is, we judge ourselves based on our intentions, but other people judge us based on our impact. And there's often a huge gap between the two. Think of Annabelle, a superstar at her company. She's brilliant, creative, and tireless. But her team can't stand her. Her 360-degree feedback report says she's impatient and disrespectful. Annabelle is baffled. Her intention is to be respectful. She's been working so hard at it. What she doesn't realize is that her inner thoughts, her frustration and contempt for what she sees as her team's incompetence, are leaking out. They're in her tone of voice, her eye rolls, her sighs. Her team doesn't see her good intentions. They see the impact of her leaky contempt, and they conclude that she's not just disrespectful, she's disingenuous. We can't see our own faces. We can't really hear our own tone of voice. Our brains are designed that way. When we speak, the part of our brain that analyzes tone in others actually switches off. This is why you sound so strange to yourself on a recording. For the first time, you're hearing yourself the way the rest of the world hears you. We all have these blind spots. The only way to see into them is to have the courage to ask others what they see, and the humility to believe it might be true. That covers the truth trigger. But what about when the feedback might be true, but you can't hear it because of the person giving it? That's the relationship trigger. Imagine Louis comes home with red roses for his wife, Kim, to kick off a romantic weekend. Kim looks at them and says, "Listen, I don't want to take this the wrong way, but red roses are not my thing. I've told you this before." Louis is triggered. Does he say, "Oh, you're right. I'm sorry I forgot. Tell me again what flowers you like"? No. He says, "Can I critique how you just told me that? You should have thanked me first." Suddenly, they're not talking about flowers anymore. Kim is talking about feeling unheard. Louis is talking about feeling unappreciated. They are on two different tracks, heading in opposite directions. The authors call this switch tracking. The original feedback gets lost because the receiver is so triggered by a relationship issue that they change the topic without even realizing it. Louis isn't trying to avoid Kim's feedback. In his mind, Kim's ingratitude is the topic. This happens all the time. Your boss tells you your sales numbers are down. Topic 1. You respond, "Why are you telling me this right before I go on vacation?" Topic 2. The conversation is now about timing and respect, and the sales numbers are forgotten. To avoid switch tracking, you have to do something that feels unnatural. You have to spot that there are two topics on the table and give each one its own, separate conversation. You can say, "Okay, I hear your feedback about my sales numbers, and that's important. We need to talk about that. And I'm also feeling blindsided by the timing of this. Can we talk about the sales numbers first, and then circle back to talk about how we handle these conversations?" It's about disentangling the what from the who. Sometimes, the relationship trigger isn't just about how you feel treated, it's about the very dynamic between you. You're not the problem, and they're not the problem. It's the system created by the two of you together that's the problem. Imagine a husband who snores and a wife who is a light sleeper. The wife gives him feedback, "You snore. You have a problem. Fix it." From her perspective, this is 100% his fault. But from his perspective, he snores very quietly, and the real problem is that she's hypersensitive to noise and refuses to use the white noise machine he bought her. She's the problem. Who's right? Both of them. And neither of them. It's the intersection of his snoring and her sensitivity that creates the problem. You can't understand the issue by just looking at one person. You have to step back and see the system. When we're in a system, we tend to see the other person's contribution very clearly, and our own contribution, not so much. They see what we did, and we see what they did. A systems view helps us move away from blame and toward shared responsibility. It's not about you need to change, but what can we each do differently to improve this dynamic? This brings us to the final and most formidable obstacle, the identity trigger. This is when feedback feels threatening not because it's wrong, and not because of who said it, but because it shakes the very story we tell ourselves about who we are. I'm a good person. I'm a competent leader. I'm worthy of love. When feedback challenges these core beliefs, our world can come undone. Rita, your mother's best friend, tells your father she'll never speak to you again because you put your mother, who has dementia, in a full-time care facility. You thought you were being a good son, making a painfully difficult but necessary decision for your mother's safety and your father's sanity. But Rita's judgment cuts straight to your identity. The story in your head shifts from "I am a good son" to "I am a heartless child who failed my mother," and in that moment of shame and despair, learning is the furthest thing from your mind. Our reaction to identity threats isn't the same for everyone. The authors explain that our fundamental brain wiring plays a huge role. Some of us have a naturally high baseline of happiness. Like Krista, the woman who mistook angry honks for supportive ones, negative feedback just rolls off our backs. Others, like Alita, the popular doctor who is devastated by a few patient complaints about her running late, have a lower baseline. For them, positive feedback is muffled and negative feedback is amplified. Our wiring also affects our swing, how far up or down we go in response to feedback, and our recovery, how long it takes us to get back to our baseline. Some of us swing wide and recover slowly. A single critical comment can ruin our week. Others barely budge and bounce back in minutes. This isn't a matter of character or weakness, it's a matter of biology. Understanding your own wiring can be liberating. It helps you say, okay, this is how I'm built. My intense reaction isn't a sign that the feedback is a catastrophe, it's a sign that my alarm system is sensitive. But our wiring is only part of the story. The biggest factor we can control is the kind of identity story we tell ourselves. Stanford professor Carol Dweck's research is central here. She found that people tend to have one of two mindsets. A fixed mindset assumes that our character, intelligence, and abilities are static traits. We have a certain amount, and that's that. In this mindset, every situation is a test, and feedback is a verdict. It's a judgment on how much of that trait we have. If you fail, it's because you're a failure. A growth mindset, on the other hand, assumes that our abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. In this mindset, feedback isn't a verdict, it's valuable information that helps us learn. Failure isn't a judgment, it's an opportunity to grow. Imagine two kids doing puzzles. The fixed mindset kid does well on the easy ones and feels smart. But when the puzzles get harder and she starts to struggle, she gets frustrated and gives up. The feedback she's getting from the puzzle is, "You're not smart enough." She's in the testing room. The growth mindset kid, however, gets excited when the puzzles get harder. He says, "I was hoping this would be informative." He's not in the testing room. He's in the learning room. For him, struggle isn't a sign of failure, it's the path to getting better. When you have a fixed identity, your story is brittle. I am a good son. Any feedback that contradicts that shatters the whole story. To protect yourself, you either have to deny the feedback completely, "Rita is wrong and crazy," or let it destroy you, "I am a terrible person." A growth identity is more robust. It's more complex. It says, I am a person who strives to be a good son, who loves his parents deeply, and who sometimes makes mistakes or faces impossible choices with no perfect answer. That identity can absorb Rita's feedback. It can find the pain and the learning in it without collapsing. It accepts complexity. You can accept that you will make mistakes, that you have complex intentions, both selfless and selfish, and that you almost always contribute to the problem. You've been complicated all along. So how do we put all this into practice? How do we take these big ideas and use them in a real conversation, when our heart is pounding and our defenses are up? The authors offer a handful of simple, powerful ways to get started. One is to name one thing. When you're feeling overwhelmed by a flood of feedback, just ask, of everything we've talked about, what's the one thing that would make the biggest difference for me to work on? This simplifies the task and makes change feel manageable. Another is to try small experiments. You don't have to decide if the feedback is right or wrong forever. Just try it out. Your spouse thinks you should try yoga? You hate yoga. Fine. Don't decide to become a yogi for life. Just try it once. See what happens. The stakes are low, and you might be surprised. Then, learn to coach your coach. Tell people how to give you feedback effectively. You know, it really helps me if you're super direct. Don't worry about my feelings. Or, I tend to get defensive at first, but I promise I'll think about what you said later. You can help them help you. And finally, perhaps the most courageous act of all is to invite them in. Receiving feedback well isn't just a transaction, it's an act of connection. When you ask someone for help, when you show them your flaws and your uncertainties, you transform the relationship. You become someone humble enough to ask, and they become someone respected enough to be asked. It's an act of vulnerability that builds deep and lasting trust. In the end, this journey isn't about becoming perfect. It's about accepting that you're not, and that growth is a lifelong process. It's about shifting your goal from defending yourself to learning about yourself. It's about having the courage to look in the mirror that others hold up for you, and the wisdom to find the truth, the learning, and ultimately, the humanity in what you see. Commentary. As we wrap up our journey through Thanks for the Feedback, I find myself reflecting on just how counterintuitive its central message is. In a world obsessed with self-promotion, with crafting the perfect image, and with being right, the idea that our greatest power lies in our ability to skillfully handle being told we're wrong, well, it's a quiet revolution. What Douglas Stone and Sheila Heen have given us is more than a communication handbook. It's a guide to humility, to curiosity, and to a more grounded and resilient way of moving through the world. For someone your age, just starting out, this is more than just a useful skill, it's a fundamental advantage. While others are building walls to protect their egos, you can be building bridges to new insights. While they are busy defending their blind spots, you can be working to illuminate yours. The most powerful lesson for me is the shift from push to pull. It reframes the entire dynamic of personal development. It means you are no longer a passive recipient of whatever feedback happens to come your way. You are the driver. You are in control of your own learning curve. You don't have to wait for a great boss or a wise mentor. You can learn from your difficult colleague, your critical relative, and even the stranger who delivers a clumsy piece of advice. Everyone becomes a potential teacher, because you have become a master learner. The concept of the 3 triggers, truth, relationship, and identity, is a game changer. It's a diagnostic tool for your own heart and mind. The next time you feel that flash of anger or the sting of shame, you won't be lost in the emotion. You'll have a framework. You can take a step back and say, that's an identity trigger, or I see, we're switch tracking. That awareness is the space between stimulus and response, and in that space lies your freedom and your growth. If you were to take just one thing from our conversation today and put it into practice, I would suggest this: find one person in your life whom you trust and respect. It could be a parent, a teacher, a coach, or a close friend. Go to them and ask this one simple, powerful question: what's one thing you see me doing, or failing to do, that sometimes gets in my own way? Then, just listen. Don't defend. Don't explain. Just listen to understand. It will be uncomfortable. It will take courage. But I promise you, that one conversation could unlock more growth than a dozen books on success. Because it's real, it's personal, and it's the beginning of you taking the driver's seat in your own journey. That is the power of creating pull. That was a summary of Thanks for the Feedback by Douglas Stone and Sheila Heen. We've explored the core ideas today, but I'll be honest with you, a summary can only ever be a map. The real treasure is found when you make the journey yourself. The book is filled with stories, nuances, and moments of quiet insight that we simply couldn't cover. This summary is designed to help you decide if this book is worth your time. If anything we've talked about today has sparked your curiosity or resonated with a challenge you're facing, I encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning a new skill, it's an experience that can genuinely change the way you see yourself, your relationships, and your potential for growth. The link to the book is in the description. Also, if you found this summary valuable, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next journey into another life-changing book. Every week, we explore the ideas that have shaped the world's most successful people. Let's keep learning and growing together.